Welcome to the Funnel Reboot Podcast with your host, Glenn Schmeltzley. Let's get into today's show.
Hey, Glenn here. Welcome to another show where we talk about things that are geared for analytically minded marketers. Those of you who know me outside of this podcast know that if I'm doing anything that involves advertising, whether it be in a classroom or a consulting setting, I think of ads as a complicated puzzle that's never fully solved. While it may not have a predictable outcome like other endeavors, there are a few key principles about it that always seem to be true. I picked up this through lessons learned by studying competitors or looking at the brands that have entrusted me to run their ads. That has sometimes come through painful trial and error. The models and principles that come out of this process have given me valuable baseline knowledge, and that's what can be applied to case-by-case decisions. But it's really hard to pass along these insights to others. They're often too abstract, and the examples, if you're using cases, become stale and dated as campaigns get retired. Does this mean that anyone wanting to get this perspective on advertising has to spend all those years and go through the same process I did? Not necessarily. Thanks to someone with a gift for brevity and illustration, these principles can be found in a book. And as I leaf through the pages of this book, I'm delighted to see that they're given clear shape and an easy to remember format. The person who wrote the book graduated from Cambridge University with a Master of Arts. He's worked in marketing and market research and branding for over 30 years. And he uses imaginative visuals to bring these concepts that he knows to be true to life. He's back on this show for a third time, and he's one of the nicest authors I've had on. So let's go to England now to speak with Dan White. Dan White, I want to welcome you back for the third time to Funnel Reboot.
Thank you, Glenn. Yeah, third time? That sounds
cool. Quite a distinction. And we've had you on to talk about two other books. Those are the Smart Branding book and the Smart Marketing book. What is the name of the book we're going to talk about today?
Well, surprise, surprise, it's a Smart Advertising book.
So I can sense a theme here. And Dan, the first question would be, given that you've done so many different concepts and illustrated them in these two other books, why did you feel that this book was needed?
Well, I guess the Smart Advertising book was like an overview of all the kind of concepts that you need to understand to be an effective marketer. And then the branding book was focused on, brand building, how to establish a brand identity, a brand, and how to build that. And then this feels like the natural next step, which is how to advertise that, how to promote that brand and make it real in the real world.
Well put. There are some very practical and tangible ways that we can look at this in this book compared to some of the others, which may have been more to settling your strategy.
Right.
So the first thing you hit us with is that advertising isn't new. So we might want to think that, according to at least Hollywood, that Mad Men invented advertising. Not true. You instead say we can go back something like 5,000 years.
No, I'm not sure about 5,000, but at least 3,000 years BC. No, you're right. 5,000 from now, but 3,000 BC.
And what were we doing back then? How were we possibly doing advertising? What shape did it take?
Well, I guess one of the most famous examples is from 3,000 BC, where a shop that made lovely clothing. They made beautiful robes. I don't know. Is it robes back then? Probably. Anyway, and they did this kind of ad that said, "Oh, we've had one of our slaves who's run away, and if you could help us find them, that'd be great. And come to our shop where you can experience the best clothing you could imagine. It's like, oh my God. In fact, it's one of the most sophisticated types of advertising is the first
Yes.
recorded type of advertising.
Yes.
Amazing.
So we've got, I guess we can glean from that some of the things that all advertising should have. One is kind of who we are. And then I guess the next one is,
What do we do?
right.
Yeah, what do we do?
And then a
You know,
call to action. Like, what do
we
you do about that? And could
come
you
to
please
us
bring back
to
our
see our
slave
great.
while you're at it?
Well, yeah, but that bit's irrelevant, really, isn't it? Let's be honest. that bit was like the excuse
Yeah,
for the ad.
that's right. Pretense.
Yeah.
So I guess
Nice.
that knocks off two of the ones that you have in a 3F format. So we've kind of
Right.
hit maybe familiarity, and maybe we've
Sure.
hit the other one called fit. Pardon the pun, terrible dad joke, but if they're going to make clothes, you might as well get clothes that fit.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
then the
fair
third
enough.
one is fame. So familiarity, fit, and fame are ones that you outline. I think that's a very nice way
Sure.
to summarize what ads can do. Do you
Yeah.
think that that is something that we can apply to companies of all size? I mean, I know that it's easy for global brands to, make that fame one land, but
Sure.
what do you think about those three Fs and like does the amount of prominence of each one of those Fs change when we move from small to large companies?
I don't know. I don't think it changes as much as
Okay.
people think. Because if we're talking about a small B2B
Yep.
company, you still need familiarity, fame, fit, and fame. That the criteria are exactly the same. It's just that the world is smaller.
Right.
The number of competitors may be smaller, but I can't see how it varies really.
Right. So you're maybe famous to the 10 organizations that you need to be known by.
Exactly. You're famous within a very small
Yes.
world, of course. Yeah. B2B, depending on what you do, it may be very niche, but you still need to be famous in that world. As in famous, as in, when we talk about fame, we mean kind of, you're one of the brands that comes to mind when people are thinking about what they need, in terms of B2B services.
And we're talking about something that's forming in the mind of our buyer. And you've got some wonderful diagrams. I mean, the book is just filled with diagrams, but some of these at this stage of the game are showing the human mind and showing how we can perhaps be planting ourselves, let's say now, but at some future point in time when they feel or maybe think or even know that they need something, that's when your brand all of a sudden, resurfaces.
Yeah. It surfaces in the mind and has and impinges, and influences purchasing. I mean, I love one of my favorite examples is Uber advertising. So Uber, in the book, I've got this Uber ad from 2014. It's a very straightforward ad. It's not complex. But it was placed around subway stations. When people are about to go to the subway in America to to go home, and let's be honest, that experience is not a great experience.
We have the huddled masses
Yeah.
at rush hour.
Yeah, the huddled masses, the
Right.
sweaty
and
masses.
trains filling up and overfilling.
Exactly. You don't necessarily get on the first, second, or even third train in some cases when it's really busy. So Uber did this amazing campaign where, as you were just outside or just stepping into maybe the subway station, they had this ad, and it just said, "You already know you won't get a seat on the next train."
Cheeky.
Right? I know, but true. And they had a silhouette of a car, and then Uber, right?
And I'll also mention. So you said it's 2014. Uber was only a 5-year-old company at
Yeah,
that point. So they weren't the
yeah,
household name
right.
they are now.
No, they were growing. They were establishing what they do and why they do it. Right.
That's a very good way to put it. And again, I think the fit is perfect at a time like that, right? Am I going to stand on the
Yeah.
platform
Yeah.
for yet a few more trains until I finally, get my weary butt home? Or
Exactly.
could I just be sitting in a nice car, snoozing while,
Right now.
somebody else does the
Yeah.
driving?
Exactly. I mean, yeah, okay, but you kind of imagine, so it's the right people at the right time with the right message. That's a
Yep.
classic media
Yep.
program.
And that one does check all the boxes. You also say that allowed Uber, and this is the intent of all advertising when it's brought in full force, to make a severe dent in sales. Um, the impact of that
Hmm.
sales, it's not just the same no matter what kind of advertising you make. What's the point that you stress about, advertising and when it may or may not positively impact sales?
Oh, I see. Yeah. When does it
Yeah,
have its
it doesn't. I just don't
influence?
wave a magic
Yeah.
wand and put my credit card into something that does advertising, and poof, I get more sales.
So ad quality is a huge variable in terms of advertising effectiveness. You can punt out some really boring, generic, predictable, avoidable advertising, and you'll get a tiny effect. You may get a little bit of short term or response to your advertising, but if you can create something really special, something that captures people's imagination, something that sparks, it creates an emotional response, you can create a much bigger response for every time someone sees your advertising. The variable is huge. It's at least 10 times between the least and the most effective advertising. So it's worth paying for and working with creatives who really know what they're doing.
Yeah, and you put this on more than one dimension. It is not only that they will be um, perhaps buying, or maybe if there's high
Yeah,
quality ads, they'll be buying more, but the duration over which they'll be buying will be longer.
right. No, it's a really important point because there's a lot of evidence that advertising has two effects. Okay, in any one category at any one moment, there's a proportion of category buyers who are actually ready to buy. And if they experience advertising in that little window when they're actually buying
Hmm.
the category, um, it can have a huge effect on them. Okay, that's great, but at least as important is the long term effect, which is when people experience advertising, even if they're not ready to buy now, they will be later in a week, a month, 6 months, maybe even longer. They will become ready to buy, and if they can still remember your advertising ideas, messages, things that make your brand compelling, then you increase the chances of your being brand of your brand being bought um, on those occasions, not just now, but far into the future. And I think that's the balance. Great advertising affects people now and months and years later.
Hmm. And part of that is at least in modern advertising, we can
Mm,
set those activations to happen at different times. We can set campaign flights to happen over time. But to do that, we've got to stick our head
right,
into the ways that we are actually deploying advertising. And you point out that there's
right,
a lot of specialties. Um, I'm sure that most listeners to this show, work in marketing and are aware that you need to work with, different kinds of agencies. They may be brand,
right.
they may be media buying agencies. There are obviously people that have databases and people that are
Yeah,
involved with platforms that will put the media into effect. But you say that
yeah,
one of the best things that a brand can do, yes, you want to be making sure that the advertising creative is high quality and has that fame, familiarity, and fit. But you have to give them an education. It's incumbent on you to educate them about what your brand stands for so that those various experts can pull off that advertising. Tell us more about that.
Well, I'm not sure it's about educating them about what the brand stands for. Yeah, I get you. It's more, what do we want this brand? What ideas, thoughts, and
Okay,
feelings do we want to associate with brand? I feel that's a more useful way
sure.
of
And you
talking
have to
about
be
it.
clear about it. You can't just throw them the money and expect them to figure that out.
No. Yeah, it's the brand owner's responsibility to define exactly the thoughts, feelings, emotions, etc., that, that they know, or hopefully they know through research, um, are the ones that will make their brand a compelling choice when people are buying the category.
Very well put. They will do as well as the information that you give them.
That's right. I mean, a brand owner needs to know, what are all the different usage contexts. There are lots of phrases, demand spaces, category entry points, all these things. When could their brand be purchased? And their job is to make sure that the brand comes to mind for as many people as possible when those people are looking for that job to be done. That's
Hmm.
another expression.
Yep, that's right. People aren't buying your product, they're buying what the product can do for them.
Exactly.
And we've got not only just plain old paid media for this, but we can sometimes
Mm.
use our own channels. We can have it earned by various people. You even point out some interesting ones where I can't remember who the truck driver was, but you had an employee who like put a GoPro on, was it for something like cranberry juice?
Yeah, it was. No, this was one of those lucky
Yep.
incidents, where just someone who happened to like cranberry juice, decided to create a video with them using, I think it was a skateboard, or a bigger version of a skateboard, and just enjoying their journey to work. I think the story was that their truck had
Okay.
broken down, you know, and they just said, "Oh, that's fine. I'll just take my
Yep.
longboard." I probably got this wrong, Glenn. I'm sure you know better than me. But they took this longboard and skated to work, and they enjoyed the cranberry juice along the way, and they listened to a classic Fleetwood
Right.
Mac, a track along the way. And it's like, oh my God, I can't believe how lucky the brand owner was that someone had done this kind of really surreal and beautiful video, um, connected to their brand. They did the right thing, of course, because, if something like that happens, the best thing a brand can do is to
Yes.
celebrate it, invest in it, and publicize it, right? And they did. This was Ocean Spray,
Okay.
by the way, cranberry juice. They did an amazing job. Just, oh my God, what a cool thing! That's fun. Let's celebrate it. Let's promote it. Let's give him a truck full of Ocean Spray, juice, which they did. It was wonderful.
Yeah. And the takeaway for me was that ads aren't created in a vacuum. You have to be, following memes. You have to have some,
Right.
more or less. It'll happen more in a consumer brand than a business brand, but you've got to be in tune with the zeitgeist. And it can sometimes
Yeah.
bring along things like this user generated content, pure earned media that you can choose to weave into your brand message, right?
Yeah. Lean into, leverage, amplify. I should say you don't need that. I mean, those occasions are quite rare. I mean, it's lucky if you have it, and if you do, you should really go for it, because you can benefit so much from leveraging some lucky piece of owned media. But you can still do a pretty good job with your own paid for media. And I think in terms of being accountable to
Right.
shareholders, you have to focus more on the paid media. You can't rely on the chance of earned.
No, and also I think you have to stay anchored to those shareholder needs or your vision, because
Mm,
otherwise, and I think
mm,
this is an area sometimes that cause based advertising falls into, where
mm.
people feel that because something has become popular, that they want to echo that in their advertising, and they feel that they ought to use
Ooh,
the ad dollars that they're given to speak out on, you know, something that some people within the marketing group uh, feel strong about.
that's
It
interesting.
it's a
Tell me
case
more.
by case
Tell me more.
decision, I think, and we have to watch ourselves.
Yeah, no. Tell me more. Tell me more, Glenn. Tell me more about what's behind that question. Are you you thinking about brand purpose kind of
Or
things, or?
more like where a
Mm,
brand notices, let's say, strife in the world, and
mm,
they're either trying to just ride the trendiness of it. So I remember there was a Kenneth
right,
Cole campaign where there was some, terrible events in, a war-torn
right,
part of the world, and they were like, "Oh, this is terrible," but while we're here, you should know that our bags are on sale. Pepsi had the
right.
misstep with a commercial that had during a time of police strife in the United States of one of the Jenners
Right.
putting a rose inside of a
Oh yeah.
gun that a SWAT team person was holding while they were trying to do crowd control. We have to watch ourselves.
Right. Yeah. Yes, I understand. Yeah, it's kind of like, yeah, there are short-term tactical things you can do, and if your team is in tune with the zeitgeist, they can leverage those things to great effect. But that will help you in the short term, and that's great, and that will boost things. But I'm more interested in the kind of
Hmm.
longer term strategic thinking,
Yeah.
because okay, because the growth, brand growth comes from consistency and building a theme, and returning to that theme, or returning to specific distinctive brand assets as they're known, and using them again and again and again, because that is what we know leads to sustained growth. Not tactical. Yeah, okay, a blip in sales now if
Right.
you're lucky. No, I mean that's fine, but shareholders want a long-term return, right?
I love the word asset that you use. That is the idea behind an asset, that you are investing in
Right.
something now
Yes.
that will, over time, bring a much greater value than the cost you put into it. And you talk about a few formulas that we're using to measure our advertising. And you point out quite rightly that
Sure.
we have to include the cost of the ads that we're making while we are measuring
Yeah.
the return on, the profit from those ads.
Yeah, that's often
Yeah.
forgotten, because obviously, there are a lot of costs in advertising. There's the management time, right? There's the cost to for the creatives to develop it, and then you've got the
Yeah.
media. There's a lot of costs behind advertising that aren't always recognised in ROI.
Yeah, we ignored at our peril. I wanna cover
Right.
off a little bit of some of the ways that you've
Mm,
described some interesting models with advertising, and particularly
mm.
around how we make the creative that is going to be that high quality advertising. But before that, we're going to take a really short break.
I'll step away to address one thing that's been missing from Funnel Reboot: the ability to access the text of any show. I'm glad to finally announce that the podcast is now fully searchable and copyable thanks to the transcript feature in YouTube. Go on to YouTube, head to Funnel Reboot's channel. Okay, now let's get back to the show.
Dan, you have put together some great illustrations and memorable pictures that can point out how we should look at advertising. One of them that I'm thinking of has to do with the way that we can develop our creative. And you use the acronym LEGS. So I'll just say what they are. L is laugh out loud,
Right.
E is edgy, S is shocking, and S might be sexy. But you've used a string of emojis. So I will forever remember those, four emojis together to tell me how we make those creatives work. Um, these notions that you've put together and the way that you've made them so memorable, do you find that readers
Yeah.
are able to put put them to greater use because they're so memorable?
Well, I hope so. I mean, that's what I've been trying to do for the last 5 years
Yep.
since I left corporate life. Yeah, exactly. I've created these books, and the books are full of illustrations like the one you described. In fact, that legs LEGS acronym was something I came up with, many years ago. And yes, I hope that these visuals and these acronyms and these mnemonics help marketers to remember what to do and what works. Yeah, that one in particular,
Yep.
by the way. The legs LEGS.
It's and go
I,
ahead.
I, yeah, go on. No, I was just going to say, I was quite happy with this because you know, as someone who tries to visualize concept, well, not only visualize, but make concepts memorable. A visual's good, but if you've also got kind of a verbal cue, it's even better, So legs. When you say legs, I mean, maybe I'm just a creepy old man, probably. But legs. I think of uh,
Yep.
people's legs. In my case, females, people's legs, and you know that's something interesting to me.
Or just
Right?
the way I've heard it put is, we talk about things that have legs like
Yeah,
they have a sustaining, duration to them.
exactly. So you've already got a double meaning.
Ah,
Legs that
right.
conjure something, and then legs. Yeah, yeah, exactly. That's why I like this mnemonic a
Mhm.
lot. And then to also, it happened to fit the findings that we came up with about what makes what are the ingredients for advertising that tends to be
Yep.
shared. Earned media. And it is laugh out loud funny. If it's really funny, not just amusing, but really funny, people share it. If it's
Yep.
edgy, if it's a bit edgy, people share it. Not with everyone, just with the people they think will appreciate the edginess. Gripping.
Yeah.
Gripping is something you can apply to any advertising. The more gripping it is visually, well, not just visually, but the gripping entertainment, it'll be
Right.
remembered and shared. And then S is for sexy. Back to the
Yeah.
legs. It's sexy. It's a bit of a cliche, but it works.
I think it does, and I think it's timeless. I mean, you in that example and in many others of the book are quoting quite
Mm,
recent findings by both industry leaders and academics.
yeah,
But this phrase here, it's so uh, great at being memorable while we are in the, let's say, day to day maelstrom of putting together, creative and getting things approved. We we may not
yeah,
remember why we're doing it until we are brought back to things like legs. And it
sure.
in my brain, it kind of lodges in the same place like a pithy quote. So like the pithy quote that I would put right beside this would be the old one by Howard Gossage, who said,
Yeah,
you know, people don't read ads. People read things that they're interested in. And sometimes
yeah,
that thing is an ad,
yeah. Oh, yeah. I love that quote. Yeah, I'd forgotten that one. I love that one. Yeah,
right?
it- you
Don't
know that's
design an
that's,
ad.
that's how advertising. No, you create something people are interested in that relates to your
Yeah,
brand. I mean, it almost sounds stupidly simple when we
right.
talk about it. It's not. I know it's not. And I've worked with a lot of creatives over the years. It's not, but the principles are simple. I think, and also I apologize for bringing this back down to basics, but uh, Glenn, can you remember who first said that sex sells?
No.
I don't know for sure, but it's a
Yeah, of
phrase, right?
course.
You know, we, we hear it. And I'm not saying you should always use that in all
No,
your
but
ads.
you
Far
mentioned
from
some
it.
cross-cultural studies, and it's one of the things that carries around
Yeah,
the world.
yeah, exactly. It's one of the few things that are absolutely consistent across all cultures in the world. And sexual attraction, not surprisingly, and no, not just that. Okay, let's move on, right? Also, the thought that we want to look after our family
Yep.
and our children. You know, that is a fundamentally important thing that works across the whole world. And if you're creating international advertising, you can't go wrong if you're going to base your advertising on those themes.
So to take that point as a launching pad,
Yeah.
let's talk about how what you mean, as you describe in the book, is not just, you flash something in front of people and that's like a stimulus and response. Humans are more complicated than that. What we really want is we want progression. We want a story. And you point out particularly, you speak about it in the static image ads, but then in the video ads chapters, you really get into how, although we may only have 30 or 60 seconds to do it, we need to be telling a story. We need to be following the same elements that you can bring forward from Shakespeare, that you can bring forward from Aristotle. You need to show that.
But the thing is, stories do not necessarily require a 30 or 60-second video ad. You can tell an incredible story through a poster, for example. An example I often use is Specsavers. The one I keep thinking of is they had this kind of ad shell. They'd done a kind of a decal, a kind of a projection on the ad shell ads, and it looked like a scooter or a motorbike had crashed through the ad shell, as if, and they said should have gone to Specsavers, which is part of their campaign about how people, if they haven't got haven't got corrected sight, do things they shouldn't do, and it's quite humorous. So it's not dark. It's a fun campaign. But if you've built this up for several years, which they have done in the UK, they have license to do this, and actually, it was great because that static image told a story. Someone who should have gone to Specsavers and should have got some better spectacles, unfortunately crashed through this ad shell. Brilliant. No, that's a story. A story doesn't have to be. A story is just an idea or a sequence of what happened in the past. You can tell brilliantly, I think, through words and pictures, not necessarily videos.
And I think another thing that you're doing there is, with that particular example, our brains are, from the time we wake up in the morning all day, we're seeking patterns. But the interesting thing is that our brains just as much notice when the pattern has been broken. So people see billboards all day long. You show a billboard with literally something breaking through the two-dimensional billboard, your brain's going to wake you up and call that to your attention.
It's like, what's that? You just summarized exactly how the brain perception kind of works. This is actually an area I know a little bit about, more than marketing, if I'm honest. Psychology. I studied psychology at university, and it's kind of like there is a part of the brain, right, that just looks around and senses, using its all of its senses to try and understand what is happening, what's going on, what's the story. It's literally a story. Like, you see, someone over there and something over there. We all do it ourselves. Like, oh, who are they? I wonder if they're a couple. Who's that child? Is that theirs? We do it naturally because there's a part of our brain doing that. It's a specialist part of our brain that's trying to create the story of our perception. So we respond brilliantly to stories. That is why storytelling in advertising is so incredibly effective. That's basically the best way to break through and get people to notice and remember is to tell a story. And like you just said, if the story is a bit weird, like, this is a bit random, Glenn. I don't know why I thought. I think I've thought of it because I just saw Godzilla -1 on Now TV, and I kind of want to watch it because it looks quite good. Anyway, I was thinking, if I suddenly see Godzilla coming into my view, that is really interesting. That's more than interesting. That's really important. That has to go straight through to our frontal cortex. We need to attend to this because we might be eaten by Godzilla. Do you see what I mean?
As absurd as that sounds, you're absolutely right. right? We
Yeah.
know that thing on the screen isn't going to eat us, but we want to see it.
No. No, and also, but we kind of virtually consume it. We kind of think it might. Otherwise, that's why TV and cinema works, because although we kind of know it won't, we kind of feel it might.
Suspension of
You know,
disbelief. Yeah.
we can't. Yeah, exactly.
Love it. When you're taking us through these, different ways that we can do advertising, you've got some ways of summarizing them in an illustration. You do a chapter on celebrity impressions, and this one I love because when a celebrity is endorsing a product, how you chose to show it
Yeah.
was bricks on a scale. You were obviously showing pros and cons. And on one of the
Oh yeah, yeah.
con side, what you did was you had a teetering brick and it said, the celebrity could do something unpredictable. But
Unpredictability.
the
Yeah,
brick
I
is
I
about
was
to
thinking.
fall off the scale.
No,
It's
no.
just
Yeah.
that very,
Well,
very easy for my brain to go, and you're showing yet again the way that our brain looks into a story. Even here on advertising, you're kind of using those same methods to stick in my brain as, oh yeah, I better remember
yeah,
if I want to sign up a person.
yeah,
They
yeah,
might be the next George
exactly.
Clooney, but they may not. They may be somebody who does something terrible, and that harms my brand,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. They could do something terrible after the
right?
first ad. I mean, you know,
The
I
fact
know.
that it
I think
was,
too much.
I guess what I'm saying is you're drawing on, just a 2D page, but my brain is
Yeah,
putting physics into what I'm looking at,
onto it.
and it's
Yeah,
that something could happen. It's the same as what I've heard they describe excellent cartoonists. How a
yeah,
cartoonist is, really
right.
known for being excellent is you can show many moments,
Okay.
but you only get to show a moment in one cell. So
A moment.
which one do
Yeah,
you
because
pick?
it's static. Yeah. No. Again, I'm still learning. I'm still learning a lot about cartoon skills, but you're right. Um, but that the fact that people know what a scale is, right? They know it's about a weight. They understand
Yeah.
momentum and no, not momentum,
Yep.
gravity, right? And therefore, that's the beauty of using visuals. You don't have to. You're leveraging things people already know to tell the story in a simple 2D
Exactly.
graphic.
And then you can
That's my
even do
job.
it with several complex things. And one that you brought
Right.
into the areas that I thought was you beautifully illustrated how we can step beyond just advertising, but bring in not only paid media, but owned media and earned media. And you do that by showing us three objects that all have brand X, which runs throughout the book. And
Oh yeah.
so in the paid media, we're seeing brand X on a billboard. So just like your Specsavers.
Yep.
But right
Right.
underneath it, we see obviously one of brand X's delivery trucks or vans. And it's got their name slapped
Right.
on the side. So that is owned
Yeah.
media. And then,
Of course, because they own the van. They're
right.
publicising on the side of the
And
van. Of
then
course.
tell us what you did for earned media.
Well, the third one, I chose a camper van because on a camper van, I'm thinking of a classic
Yep.
VW,
Yep.
Volkswagen camper. Yeah, I'm thinking often they put like things that they
Right.
love
Could
on
be
the
a
side.
Grateful Dead symbol or a peace symbol. Yeah.
Anything, things that they support. I put I can't remember exactly what it is, but we love
Right.
brand X because if some brands create that kind of cult following that people want to promote, and that's kind of you know amongst the most powerful brands are ones that do that. Yeah, I, I wish, Glenn, I could come up with ideas like that every day. That was one
Well,
of my
it
best.
certainly beats looking just at blobs on a like
Yeah,
a business
exactly.
school
It's better
textbook.
than reading a well for me it's yeah, exactly. It's better than reading a couple of paragraphs because I hate reading. I'm it sounds
You're
awful. I write
author of
books,
3
but
books
kind of
here, Dan. Hate to break it to
yeah,
you.
yeah, no, but yeah, 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 but yeah, come on, let's be honest. My visuals are more important than my
Yes.
words. I mean, I'm proud of my
Yes.
words, right? But the visuals are more important,
Right.
I think, in
Right.
my
And
opinion.
I'd say that the vast majority of your readers are alongside of that. And then I'd be remiss if I didn't bring up how far you can take
Mm,
this. So just to give people a taste of it, you brought up
yeah,
something. I hadn't heard of it before, Hankins hexagon. And we're not going to be able
Oh
to do it
yes.
justice here, but if you can
No, it's
try
hard.
and
Yeah.
give people just a sense of how in a few short illustrations they can understand some of the deep consumer thought patterns and
Mm,
behaviors that someone may go through on the way to buying. I mean, for me, it blows a traditional awareness, interest, desire, action funnel out of the water because it actually provides a more credible model for describing consumer behavior than simple
yeah,
simple
yeah.
formulas.
Actually,
Yeah.
what happens, kind of thing. Yeah, what people do and what they experience. No, I get that, and I guess that's one of the great things about this Hankins hexagon. It's James Hankins,
Okay.
by the way. He's a brilliant. I'm not sure how to pigeonhole him really, but definitely a media expert. Touch point expert, marketing expert. The idea is that in the modern day, yeah, what's important is the experience people have from the very first time they even ever come across a brand to the point where they hopefully buy it. And it's actually quite complex these days because you have, potentially paid for media that might get people to be aware of the brand in the first instance, and that may or may not trigger them to find out more about the brand. Particularly if it's a category where people kind of need to explore it a bit more, investigate
Yes.
more,
Consider.
find out
Yep.
more about it. Yeah, consider, explore, investigate, research, all that kind of stuff. Although even in FMCG, this happens to some extent. But anyway, yeah, the point is, at that point, they're going to be bounced around various places. They may search for the category or the brand and find out more. They may go to a website, right? They may go to a site with reviews that tell them that this brand is good and this brand isn't good. There are lots of different touch points that they may or may not bounce around before they finally decide what to buy. And I think that's kind of how modern purchasing works for a lot of categories. Yeah. So you can't just rely on your advertising and your website. What about all the other things that people come across through search and reviews in the
Yeah.
meantime? And the beautiful thing about just the beautiful thing about the Hankins hexagon is that hex is, how many
Six.
is that? Six, right? Yeah, thank you. I don't want to get it wrong. You can summarize the six kind of most important kinds of touch point people come across, and because you can arrange it in hexagon, because I'm very visual, you can see how people can go to one to the other in various different orders. It's not linear, it's not
No,
predictable.
it's
It's
it's literally like a map that somebody could imagine a car traveling
Mm.
along, and that their GPS is guiding them different ways towards their destination. And I think with digital,
Glenn, have
right,
you seen?
this is what we have to be ready
Sorry,
for.
Glenn. I was just going to ask: have you seen my pinball analogy for the hexagon?
No.
Because I quite like that as a way of thinking. It's similar to what you just said, but imagine at each of the
Yep.
nodes of the hexagon that there's a little bar that you can, if your marketing's good, you can ping
Right.
people to another one. Yeah, do you
Yes,
see what
that
I
it
mean?
that it actually puts more momentum on
Mm.
the user and drives them to the
Yeah,
next.
and drives them to things that your brand that will make your brand stand out and
Certainly,
appear
certainly
good.
better
That's
than
the key.
interactions that they have that make them apathetic and they just stop. Right.
Exactly. Yeah. Ideally, you grab them and you ping them to places that make them even more excited and then they buy. That would be the perfect
Yeah,
scenario.
and it's
Like a
it's
pinball. Like a
exactly
pinball, you play it and you win. You get into the. I don't play
right, but
pinball
you
very
drive
often,
up the
but
score, whatever it is. But yeah,
yeah,
and it's this. I mean,
exactly.
it's a dance between the brand and the buyer, and you just offer so many different ways that allow people to maybe remember some of these fundamentals, but also to look at them in totally new ways, and then I think just set the book down, back on the corner of their desk and get into executing on the next thing that they're doing today. And I find that
Yeah.
it's useful on the job like that. But I will also tell you that I find it useful in the advertising course that I teach, and that the
Oh yeah.
college and university students really find these far quicker to absorb, because they just tickle the parts of our brain that will actually make them memorable.
Yeah. That's my job.
And
You've just described what I see my vocation as. I say job. I don't make much money out
Right.
of this.
calling.
Yeah, my vocation is calling.
And you do it well,
Is-
Dan. Dan, if people want to find the
Oh.
book themselves and put their hands on this little gem of a book, where would you send them?
Obviously, the easiest place is to go onto Amazon, and certainly in the UK. And in just a few short weeks, it should be available globally through Amazon. So Amazon is the best place to go, and just search for the smart mark. Sorry, got it wrong. The smart marketing book is my my
Right.
claim to fame, my original. But this one is actually a lot better. It's a smart advertising
So
book.
just look for that.
Exactly. Just search for that. You should find it. Dan White, if it doesn't come up initially. And yeah, it's selling. Thankfully, it is starting to sell well, because people are hopefully starting to acknowledge how useful it is. That's what I hope. Anyway.
That's fantastic. Dan, thanks for coming on the show. Go find ideas like Dan has shared and use them to get better insights into your marketing so you can make it even better.
Thanks for listening. Follow the show on Twitter at Funnel Reboot. If you like what you have heard today, please consider leaving a review wherever you get your podcasts.